inside of this small chamber. It's still like about 30 or so feet up in the ice that you can kind of see this glass like dome of the um oh man, I can't even think of it right now. The Chardolin that makes like the dome of this building. You're on a gigantic plinth of stone that seems to be that same dark black glass like rock. And you are in what is a larger chamber of these kind of cracks in the glacier that seem to be kind of around this. You have the area where you all came in to the north. You spotted another Remraz little tunnel to the west of that is also to the north of you. And you kind of have that chamber immediately to the south of you. Velixis, I believe, is conscious at 1 hit point now, and you all are otherwise kind of recovering from the moment of killing the one drow, and yeah, I think the other one did indeed run off, at least into the darkness at present.
So Brennick is kind of the first thing he's moving over. He wants to basically search the drow's corpse.
Roll a investigation. You can find 3 small vials of a very viscous, like dark black material. These vials are probably no larger than, say, like your pinky, with just a little stopper at the end of them. Um, and um, 2 little like packets of coins that they're kind of like rolled up together. Each one has 4 just like chunks of gold and has um 8 like chunks of silver. For what it is worth, these are effectively by weight. 8 gold coins in each and 80 silver in each. But they're basically just like trade gold and gold silver. They're not minted or anything coins, just by weight.
Gotcha. Okay. So he might he's going to carefully unstopper one of the small vials and try to take a sniff, see if he can um, try and tell what might be in this. He has a suspicion.
Like head over the vial, you're sniffing it.
Yeah, he doesn't want to. Yeah, almost kind of like letting it waft out.
Roll a Constitution save. So when you put your face over the vial, your eyes are going to start to burn. This is a very caustic material. You might take a little bit of damage from this, but as far as being beat up right now, you're still beat up, and now your eyes are kind of foobar. Um, no immediate cost, but there's maybe like disadvantage on perception checks for a few moments here, kind of thing. Um, Definitely a lesson in caustics. Maybe don't get so close to them. But yeah, you confirm they're exactly what you expect them to be.
Yeah, so he'll kind of fumbling around with his like eyes watering. He'll replace the stopper. He'll just kind of to the others be like, be careful with these. Um, he'll offer one. He'll essentially hand out one of the vials to Fen and another to Valixis, and they'll hold on to one, or he'll offer if they want them. Otherwise, he's fine carrying the three.
Willis is the tactic one, and she'll kind of like strap it to her side.
Ben will pass. Hold on to it, Brennick.
Brannick will nod and kind of tuck them away, kind of similar to Valixis. He'll keep them kind of like on his belt or like a pocket, kind of within reach. But he'll look to Fen and Valixis. A little worried about that one that got away. I think he's going for reinforcements.
Who knows? If he is, we're in no mood to fight. There's another room over here. Is anyone willing to check it? I'm a little iffy on checking it myself.
Yeah, so Fen will walk up and peek into the room and see what he can see.
So, looking into the room, you're going to see a small study. There's certain amount of kind of things like scattered about. You'll see like desks as well as some other things in kind of a closet off to your left. Whoops. But looking around, you're not really seeing anything in particular that seems kind of like out of the ordinary or um, kind of missing. What you will kind of pick up on pretty quickly is that as soon as you kind of drop your head inside of that room, you are going to feel a warmth that isn't simply like moving into a warmer area. This is like feeling your face is directly in front of like a nice big hearth that's got a raging fire inside. And you kind of feel this warmth like permeating through you, like within moments of your head kind of moving towards this door and kind of almost coming within the doorway itself. But this room seems to be emitting a large amount of heat.
Seems empty, but oddly, the temperature is abnormal. Take a step into the room.
Brannick will follow after as he kind of says that, kind of curious about what he means.
So, looking around the room for a little bit, other than a small cube of like a black stone, Chardalyn once again, kind of sitting on top of a desk here, there's nothing really of too much interest, but you can definitely feel the closer you come to that stone, the more you feel kind of like a radiance of heat that is coming from it. It's probably about a 3 by 3 inch cube.
Any markings or anything holding it onto the what's the table made out of?
Table would just be like stone. As far as markings, are you picking it up or are you just looking at it right now?
Just looking.
Roll a perception check. All right, so if I can say this properly, because I keep confusing myself on it, you can recognize that there are elvish words written in dwarvish runes that you've come to understand is Yithrin. This device has writings on it that make it clear that it is Yithrin in origin, or rather that it is of the Netheril. As far as being able to pick up what any of them means, it still might be a little bit beyond you. The meetings would be more mundane than perhaps like the translations is kind of losing things here. But perhaps at very least you kind of understand that if they mean anything, it's some sort of kind of instruction on how to use this device. It's kind of things like on, power, off, um, kind of things like that, where it's very basic. It's not really telling you much about what it is, but perhaps operational things.
Rennick is recalling the device that we were able to craft back in the Black Cabin, made use of the Charlatan that seemed to have this same similar kind of heat producing effect, but the Netherese were much more advanced in what they were able to do with this material. Kind of share that, like his thoughts with the others, as he's kind of like, he can't really make out exactly what Fenn's making out because his eyes are so watery, but
Felix calls out and asks, is it safe? As he starts to walk towards the door, just a cautionary.
rather toasty in here, actually. Haven't spotted any new danger.
If I put my hand like over the cube an inch away, do I feel the heat coming off of it?
Oh yeah, reaching closer to it, you will definitely feel the difference in the heat. In kind of around that time where Velixis is saying is there danger, and as Fen reaches out towards the device, you're going to hear from up in the rafters of the room up above your head a voice that this is going to be in Elvish. So I think Brannock, you would kind of be dropped out of understanding what happens here at first. But this voice is going to kind of speaking. You'll keep your hands to yourself, surface dweller. You've taken Nildravek's life, but you do not belong here. This is ours. You are weak. Leave, or you will be a sacrifice to Lolth.
Alexis immediately casts Cure Wounds on herself.
Fenn is gonna look up and try to locate the source of the sound, and Elvish is going to respond. I meant not to take it. Just seeing to satisfy my own curiosity about the object. And yes, we do not belong here, but we have a task we are trying to accomplish.
Looking up into the rafters, you're not going to see anything inside of the light or anything beyond inside of kind of your ability to see into the darkness. It would appear that something is speaking to you that doesn't have a physical form. Other than that you can't see something up there. You're just kind of looking towards the same. It's almost like the wedge of an orange. If you get towards the top, all three walls kind of start to come together. That's kind of what that room is shaped like that you guys are inside of. It's not an unfamiliar architecture for what you've walked through in like the spire you went through. Only that spire was underground and flipped over, so it kind of like wedged downward. instead of upward. But you guys are kind of looking up into this, and there's something up there. It's speaking to you, but you can't really locate anything with like a visual looking for it. When Valixis goes to cast a spell, you're going to hear from above incantations start to flow, and you're going to start to hear the words of this creature, and the weave is going to start to sparkle up above you all, and then it's going to hold for a moment, and nothing seems to shift from there. Be gone now.
And Braddock's just kind of looking towards Fen, like, going on? What saying? What is I can't see. Kind of like blinking still, trying to clear the the
Nor can
effect.
I suggest we leave. We're in no position to tangle.
Go where?
Valicious calls up. Valicious calls out to the voice. Would you mind if we rest here for at least a few minutes, at an hour at most?
Silly fool. You can rest for eternity if you so desire. This spire, land beyond, belongs to House Delambra. Matron Mother is already bringing her troops. Rest, or go if you would like to live.
So I think Fenna's gonna back out of the room.
Brannick, not sure what's going on. Not be able to understand. Will follow Fenn's lead though. Follow him out. I'm still like looking back, towards the rafters and towards Fenn, but following out.
So
Valicious just follows as well, with no choice in the matter. She kind of looks back at the jewel on the table, and then heads out the door.
As you're going up. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, is there any other visible route forward other than the one that we came by?
If you explore more through this actual area, you can find that there is another like side area, but it leads to dead ends. That this area where the ice has kind of shattered and cracked open, essentially leads to a dead end of going up a Remoraz tube or turning back towards the orchard.
Perhaps it would be best if we retreat to the orchard and hope to rest under the lady's watchful eye. Although she's a little too possessive for my liking.
So assuming kind of once we're out of the immediate room, kind of Brannick is able to have Fen and Valixis sort of give him a rundown of what was said. Brannick is going to kind of suggest if they they claim this area. Perhaps they've had trouble with the knoll before as well. If we can, I agree. We should probably vacate the area for now. But perhaps if we offer to try and take care of it, they would give us some sort of safe passage temporarily.
That could work, but and then if it doesn't, then we're just gonna be at their mercy. Uh, Valine, would you be able to? How long would you be able to keep a tiny hut up for us?
I didn't really pick up the question there. What were you saying, Rashad?
I was asking Valine how long she could keep the tiny hut up for us.
I mean, it's 8 hours.
If you can keep it up for a while, then we could find somewhere in here or a safe area in here, put one up and rest there for a while. Because at this point, any kind of conflict would definitely be the end of us.
I wouldn't suggest we do it here. We'll simply find ourselves surrounded whenever it drops. Perhaps Finn is right. Perhaps we should head back towards the grove, loath as I am to risk being kept there for well, perhaps we should. Certainly safer than here, I would hope. And kind of with that, Brennan's going to start moving back towards the down the steps with the idea of circling back around and making their way back the way they'd come.
Fen will follow. Fen will follow.
So as you all start to walk from the north, you can kind of head back out that northeastern corridor in the ice, coming around to the opposite side of this little like sacrificial altar or whatever this altar once was with these mages kind of looking over this dome. Heading back into the ice on the opposite side, you guys would come to another turn in the actual ice before you were in kind of a longer corridor leading back to the orchard. Are you heading in the other direction at present, or are you guys going for the orchard?
So as we kind of reach this fork, Brannick's gonna look to the others, and so far she hasn't attempted to keep us in that orchard by force, but desperation may lead her to greater measures. Perhaps we want to try seeking out some other place to try and lay low for a bit.
I agree. She is a fey creature, and they are fickle and dangerous.
Would each of you please roll a d12? Valixis, as you are following the others through these halls of ice, you're going to watch as their flesh like melts off and kind of like slows off their bones, like the fat rendering from the bones, and it just kind of starts to drip off as it's becoming liquid from this solid form. And you'll just see as their like skeletons kind of fall forward behind this like pile of goo that was all of their flesh, and like all of this rotten like bugs kind of starting to come to life from this pile of goo before just kind of continuing forward. They're walking forward perfectly fine and normal, and you're just like kind of in that moment of having just seen that over like 30 seconds or so.
After coming to from whatever she just experienced, she kind of just thinks to herself, huh, I'm glad I didn't reach out for anyone's head. I thought they were dead for a minute.
So if you all continue to walk back towards the orchard, do you know where in these areas you were planning on going?
Uh, Brennick and Van, I'll leave that decision up to y'all. Where we decide to rest. In the meantime, I'm just gonna sit on the top of one of these trees and lay down. Let me know when y'all decide where we're gonna rest. She kind of just climbs up the nearest tree and just hides herself in the bush and lays there.
So Hathawin would come out, and when Velixis starts to climb into the tree, would kind of welcome him, and you'd have a pretty similar circumstance where immediately you guys are going to be kind of inundated with questions. Have you come back to stay? Did you see the drow? Did you come back? You didn't like the drow. The drow aren't friendly. They're very unfriendly people. You've decided to stay?
We have decided to stay for a time. But as I said, good lady, we have responsibilities that we must fulfill, which prevent us from staying here.
So what do you all have in mind here? Pretty late in your day, are you going to attempt to rest?
Alexis is definitely opting to try and rest here since this seems to be the only place we not really haven't experienced any dangers as far as we know. And if they want to continue to try to find other places or further push out, yeah, if y'all want to try to continue to find other places or further push out, I would definitely advise against it. While yes, she is fine, she's quite talkative. This is definitely a safe place to rest right now.
So Brannick kind of looks a bit leery, but is getting late in the day. They're all fairly battered and kind of watching Velixis already kind of climb up into the tree, kind of feels his resistance kind of fading, and he looks towards Fen and kind of like raises his eyebrows, gives a little shrug. You think?
Fenton will ask the lady of the wood, may we seek your hospitality and promise of protection if we rest in your grove?
I've already told you that you can stay forever. You never have to leave. You are always welcome in the grove. But I cannot promise you protection. Tekalidi is a dangerous foe. I must protect my grove, the last of us who remain. I cannot also promise to protect you. But of course you can stay forever. Forever.
Upon hearing that, Fen will talk to Valine and Brannick and say, perhaps we can set the hut up here. Seems to be somewhat neutral ground, anyways.
Brannick still has an uneasy feeling, but he will nod, acquiescing to that idea.
And how big is Valine now? Is she back down to normal size?
I think about this point here, Valine would be back to normal size. She might be like a little bit large, but at least at this point she's back to mechanicals of a medium creature. But yeah, I'd say she's probably still on the large end of it. It's like a foot an hour. So it's like the first 20 hours afterwards. Yeah, so she's probably still like, say, like at least 10-ish feet kind of thing.
Not enough to prevent us all from being in the hut, though.
No, no. The first time she was a huge creature. She went to large earlier, and I think medium is perfectly understandable at this point. Um, I think she would look at things and see that you've got kind of two spots here. You can kind of camp like northwest of where Brennick and Fen are, or you could do the same thing kind of in front of the Remoras tunnel to the northwest. And I think she would say each present the same danger. If something comes by and bumps into the hut, they'll know something magical is happening there. And each of them kind of have at least a little bit of a walkway near them. Do you all have any thoughts on where you would like to camp?
Brannick would suggest maybe this kind of the smaller chamber down to the south of the grove, maybe like kind of um, that would be his kind of, or just kind of yeah, like in the southern area of the grove over here.
If you intend to camp near those creatures, we should certainly remove them before we attempt to sleep.
Oh, that's my bad. The
That's
player,
where the eye boy.
forgot about where the ice stuff was. Yep, forgot about that. So Brannick would not suggest that. Um,
How about back in the mimic layer?
If you guys want to head back in that direction, Hathawin would kind of come back to this same idea of wondering, and now you're leaving? Don't leave. We have so much to speak about. You have everything that you need in the grove. The pears? You've taken so many pears. Why? Do you continue on towards that room?
Ben's
Well,
feeling is that if we set up the hut in that room, less likely for anybody to come snooping if the Denzians of the level knew of the mimic.
Brannick will agree with Fen and kind of call to Felixus. Come on, Felixus.
when you called to me, all you hear from Alexis is like it's a small breathing noise because she has already fallen asleep on the top of the grove. Between been eaten, beaten, frozen ice, Valixis is exhausted, so she may not hear you when you call.
Ben will ascend the tree and gently wake her up. Lixus, come. We are not resting here.
She doesn't hear. I don't hear you.
I mean, he's shaking you, so on some level, like a physical movement is going to wake you up.
All right. Okay, yeah. She kind of she sits up and goes, "Ugh, where are we sleeping at?"
Back
We
the
are
way
going
we
to put the hut up, but not here in the grove.
Okay, where? And she yawns. Where are we sleeping? What room are we going to?
back the way we've come. Come on, we'll show you.
Okay. And she just exhaustively stands up and kind of just steps out of the tree.
Brannick will kind of, with a look back towards Fen, he will, and then kind of like our apologies again to Hathawin, but not really. Kind of, it's very kind of fairly terse before he starts heading back up north on the heading back for the up the stairway back towards the other chambers.
So as you all start to leave the grove, you're going to see Hathwin for the last time before you hear kind of a wind blow through all of the limbs of these trees, and they all start to shake. And you are going to hear her voice amplified as you hear, "You will stay in this grove this night, Valixis. And I need you to make a wisdom saving throw."
Or is that all of us, or just Felixus?
Just Valixis. Valixis, you cannot leave this place. As far as you are concerned, a good friend just told you you should stay here tonight, and you're intent on staying in the grove. You all heard the spell. It's by no means surprising to you all that Felixus will become like obstinate. And neither is it necessarily surprising kind of what is going on here. This is a fey creature starting to exercise her power over you. And it's going to be to tell Felixus, don't go.
Felixis just obeys, and she's like too exhausted to fight, and he turns back towards the grove and goes back up a different tree and lays back down to go to sleep.
And as Velixis lays in the tree, you're going to hear a far calmer voice. Velixis would like to stay here tonight. You all are welcome to stay. You can certainly stay with Hathawin.
Braddock's looking towards Fen. He's like, I desire to fight this creature. I have no desire to fall under its sway either.
No, but I don't think now is the time for that fight.
Risk staying here with Felixis then. Leave her to the grove and continue on.
Yeah, we'll stick with the original plan.
Sorry, by original plan, do you mean staying near here or continue on to the mimic? Sorry.
To continue on to the mimic. Ben kind of wants to see if she tries to stop us all from leaving or just Felixis.
No, at this point, as you all start to head off, the three of you, like Valine, Fen, and Brennick, can walk up to like the top of those stairs where you'll come to the Hall of Mirrors. And the room with the trash and the mimic were off to the east of those Hall of Mirrors. When the two of you are ready to cross there, let me just get a, what was that, a dexterity check, I think, to walk through it?
Yeah, I think you did the dexterity check last time.
Yeah, so you two can make your way through the room, and you guys can crawl through the tunnels into those like more isolated little object areas. And Valine can start casting the spell to create the tiny hut in that room. Do you all like go through with it? Like the three of you are going to stay in that room with the tiny hut?
Yeah, Brennick feels a twinge of conscience at leaving Velixis, but she kind of made her own bed too, so he's like, we'll go back for her, but for now we need Brennick at least um, needs this rest, so
We all
he's
do.
All right, so you guys can set up the tiny hut inside of that room. As far as things go, I think there's a pretty small chance that you guys get any level of encounter across this evening. Let me have each of you roll a d10. First one cast is the tens, second one cast is the hundreds. For Velixis, you are trying to sleep in the incessant talking of Hawthorne. And I believe as well she speaks psychically.
Look, Carthon, I'm staying here, and I don't mind the chatter, but I really do need the rest.
So you are going to do what you can to sleep through any conversation with Hawthorne?
Kind of like I was kind of, if he continues to persist, I'm not sure how I'll react just yet.
Roll a wisdom save. Or my bad, do you even have proficiency in wisdom save? A wisdom throw would be perfectly fine. You do have proficiency, so what is that, -3 for the normal? Yeah, I think for what it's worth, you can sleep above her talking. So you'll have kind of that going on. I think at very least you are going to find yourself with very unsettled sleep. I would like you to roll a D12. So you are going to have horrific dreams of being frozen in a cube of ice that you cannot move from. You are going to see a white tiefling who walks up to you, and as she reaches out her hand and you start to see her kind of unfold her fingers, you are going to see yourself in the palm of her hand, and as she kind of reaches out to you and kind of like has this like little image of you in her hand, it'll kind of converge and pull you out of your ice, and you'll kind of feel this like freedom of movement as your body kind of feels a little bit of warmth again, and the freedom from this cold that you've never really felt in your life before this. And then you're going to see her as she kind of steps over Valine, and you're going to see as you are now choking Valine, and you're going to wake up. And Hawthorne is still sitting by you talking, and she's still going on.
I just kind of like rub my eyes and goes, what in the world? And I just kind of look around, and I look at her and go, uh-huh.
Unless you create light when you go to look around, you're in pitch black here. There's no anything around you.
Oh, well then, yeah, if I'm just looking around in pitch black, I just rub my eyes, and as I listen to her, then I'm just kind of like lay back down and kind of stare for a moment into the darkness before I possibly fall back asleep.
Roll another wisdom saving throw, and then another D12 for me, please. So this time you are going to kind of fall back into a dream state and find yourself once again frozen in a block of ice, unable to move. You're just kind of locked there. You're feeling like shudders of cold. You don't actually know what shivering is, but you're shivering for the first time. And like your body's kind of lost in this almost like epileptic state of shaking. And then you're just going to see an entrancing eye. And this eye is getting larger and larger. And you start to feel less of your body. And then eventually you're going to start to feel nothingness. And there's a shock. And you're going to wake up, and again, you're not especially cold. You're still laying in the tree. This time, Hawthorne is nowhere to be seen. I guess rather, Hawthorne is nowhere to be heard. There's nothing to be seen still. Are you just going back to sleep?
Frustrated, she kind of yells out, "Can you let me sleep first? A little bit." She just yells, like, "What? Just let me sleep for a little bit. Or should I just stay awake? Let me know." And she kind of just sends that frustratingly out into the void.
Roll a d6 for me. You're going to hear as two voices inside of your head are going to say, sleep, 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 sleep. And as they start to say sleep over and over again, you're going to actually start to feel this is lulling you into a sleep.
And that's actually kind of like lays me down, falls asleep. She just kind of says, "Good. I'm trying to, but I'm constantly being woken back up. Please let me sleep if you wish for me to sleep." And she just closes her eyes and attempts to drift back off to sleep again.
And well, we got 47 from Brennick and Fenn. The three of you can have a perfectly sound night's sleep. You can take a long rest. The entire group can here. When you all head back through and pass once again through the Hall of Mirrors, there'll be times where you still see Tekalidi, the Knoll vampire, through the actual images. It doesn't leap out of the images from you this time. It's still like disbarring, jarring to walk through the Hall of Mirrors, but you're kind of getting a, oh man, that's powerful. Still getting a little bit more kind of like in touch with it, that it's a little easier to pass through, and it's not necessarily shocking to see Tekalidi, but it is kind of a reminder that like these are still the halls of this creature, and you guys are kind of borrowing time in this place. Um, but when you all arrive back inside of the grove, you are going to walk into this grove to see Hawthorne is nowhere to be seen. There are 5 creatures standing over the body of Velixis, and they are all these like large-eyed creatures, and all of them are just kind of like bowed over Velixis, and you can see her flesh is becoming a little bit less scaly and almost becoming a little bit more slimy. You can see that Velixis's eyes have moved closer to each other and have enlarged. Velixis's body is changing, and these creatures are standing over her, kind of creating the process of it. Velixis is still deep in sleep, though, when you guys round this corner and see these creatures around her.
Brennick is going to shout, Elixis, wake up. And he's going to be then looking towards the creatures.
Velixis, make a wisdom saving throw. Oh, you dirty son of a bitch. Yeah, so with that, Elixir, you can wake up from these like creatures' dreams where you're like hanging out with what was it? Jacinda was the first of her friends, or her sister. But you're like in this like idyllic kind of like dream place, and all of a sudden you hear the voice of Brennick, and it doesn't belong, and you kind of like shake yourself out of this dream, and you're going to rise with these Like, they're not large creatures, but for your size, they're still pretty big. Because they're basically still the mass of like a human, but in very like slunched over forms, where like almost like a third of their mass is kind of like this neck and head that kind of extends above the shoulders. But these large, like single-eyed creatures are just like staring down at you, and in your head, you just hear the same like monotonous droning of sleep, sleep, sleep. And all of their voices in one are going to kind of shudder to a stop as Brennick kind of walks into the situation.
Okay, I sit up and I kind of stretch and rub my eyes and I look around. And as I see these creatures and their voices finally stop, I just kind of just look at them like in, in a little bit of shock, but not completely. And then I just kind of turn towards Ben and I kind of shrug my shoulders. I'm like, I've seen worse.
They're all slowly starting to like edge backwards and away from you and away from your vision. And as soon as they can, they're kind of like dropping behind one of these walls. They're dropping like into a little like crack in the ice. But like moment by moment, they're starting to kind of like fall from your view. And after a second or two, you know where they went, but you can't see them anymore. After about like 10 or 20 seconds, you can't really hear anything else. They would like belie their movement, and the grove seems otherwise still and kind of untouched. Looks as though you will have more permanent physical changes as your eyes are much larger and they come much closer together, as they're almost like not like a yin yang, but they're like starting to do that where they're basically getting close to getting rid of like the gap in between, and you would be cycloptic.
Okay, I don't. Would I notice these changes immediately? I mean, I assume I wouldn't notice the change with my eyes immediately, since like on my face. But like, would I notice the other changes immediately?
Other changes like changes we talked about last week.
Oh no! Just what they were doing.
So this place is somewhat unique in that you actually have like the Hall of Mirrors to the north of you, where like mirrors are definitely something like not many people would ever have steel shined to a mirror finish. I would assume like a monk of the quality of caliber of Fen might be the type of person who would do it. Like a fighter would be less inclined, I think, to have like a beautiful shiny sword than a monk would. But there's occasions that you could certainly see yourself. It may not be terribly common to come across them, but like basically walking through that hall of mirrors is certainly one of the places to do it. If you had a reason to like look into somebody's mirrored like finished like armor or something, you could certainly see yourself. But that would be the type of thing like, is that really ever going to come up in Valixis's life?
We're about to find out. Velox is kind of just after she stretches and after the creatures leave, she just kind of says, "Thank you for the not so good, kind of good sleep, I guess." And just kind of jumps out of the tree and greets Brennick and Finn. And did y'all have y'all good sleep? Where did y'all sleep, by the way? Y'all never did tell me.
The Brannick is kind of looking at Valixis, kind of a bit of a like tilting his head, kind of brows furrowed. Almost like he didn't like hear the question. He's like, Valixis, do you feel all right?
I feel great. A good night's sleep, kinda. I mean, I thought I was talking for a good bit of it, but I mean, I still was able to sleep through that. I guess you just wanted someone here to talk to. Um, I don't know what those creatures were doing. I mean, I guess they were helping me sleep. I feel great. Why? What's going on? Why are you looking at me funny?
Brennan kind of like hems and haws a little bit and then kind of shakes his head. There are more important things to. Let's just be on our way.
Alrighty. And she kind of picks up her items and she follows Krennic and Finn out of the room, wherever they need to go next. Um, Speaking of, though, ooh, about that crystal we saw, should we go back and invest, or are we just gonna leave that area to be?
Imagine the drow would welcome our return. Perhaps we should check out these other passageways first. He'll kind of gesture off towards the east. The other two little side passages that we had off of the grove.
Our immediate task is still the vampire, and the drow are not to be trifled with, especially if, as he said, reinforcements are marshaling from the Underdark. They are foul, evil creatures.
Let's go follow down that passageway to the east. Oh, great! If we can find that vampire to get rid of it, it'd be great. And who knows? We might have some good material on him. Vampires, from what I know, little I know, they normally have nice stuff. I mean, living a long time, you tend to gather a lot of nice things, and I kind of want to get my hands on some of it.
By the way, Velixis, where did Hathawin go? Surprising she didn't. Haven't heard her.
I'm not sure. She was here last night. And when I woke up, it was y'all and whatever those weird creatures were.
So you all can investigate towards that eastern side. Head on in and see that there's kind of a small compartment that has a way off to the south as well as a way off to the north. Each of them kind of end in small cracks in the ice. Effectively, these are just kind of two dead ends. There's not really anywhere to explore too far beyond the actual grove.
So after kind of finding that out, Brannick they'd kind of, guess they kind of return back again to the grove and then check out the other, that other little side passage. He's almost kind of like every time he walks near the grove, he's like almost like hesitating, waiting to hear Athawin call to them. As much as like her behavior kind of found disconcerting, it's almost like her not greeting them, he's finding even more disconcerting.
So you guys start to move towards that central corridor. As the first of you kind of steps down that corridor, you're going to hear the voice from behind you as Hathawin calls out, "Don't go that way. You're just going to endanger yourselves. Lethas is not himself. We could talk about him. I could tell you. You can stay here in the grove."
So Brannick he kind of feels like a weird combination of exasperation and relief as the as he hears Hathawin speaking again. He kind of turns back and into his airlithos. Kind of takes a few steps back towards the trees.
Kind of seeing these trees like all shake at once, you're just going to hear a little more disembodied. Erithas created me many long ages ago. It was warm then, but he created us all. And you'll see as the creature kind of steps out of one of these trees in the same way, like it looks like a tree kind of growing off from the edge as it steps away from it and just kind of like sitting, maybe like just at the edge of the light, kind of like 10 or so feet away from Brennick, kind of like sitting down, almost looks like a bush, kind of like holding her legs like close to her chest as she's like doubled over on the ground, kind of, and she just kind of looks off and with like a like wistful kind of thought, like Ilitas is not himself. Many things have changed since we've come here. It's not safe in Yithrin. You shouldn't go there. You can stay here in the grove. We have much to talk about.
Well, speak then. What do you wish to talk about? What else can you tell us about the people?
What has happened on the outside? What does the sun look like? And maybe she'll like start to describe it. And perhaps it's like the type of thing where um like Fen can kind of like think back almost like 2 or 3 generations of elves where you're looking at like thousands of years in progression of like the sun, and like the way she talks about the color of the sun, you kind of recognize like almost like a grandparent or like a great grandparent once kind of described like the sun was a little bit more orange. uh I know there's some level that like um they like stars actually burn different colors, but you kind of get like this sense of like this different age, and that's one of the questions she's going to ask. Fen, it should not be unsurprising to you, this is not somebody who is offering information. This is somebody who is using information to keep you here and is not giving up information for that very same reason. um, so there's like a certain tie-in. You can certainly ask, but you 100% as soon as you ask, her response is not about what she can tell you. It's about what you can tell her.
Gotcha. So Fen will describe, especially, I think he would have uh, been very much relieved and or gladdened when the sun started to finally rise again. Uh, as far as uh, seeing it again for the first time after not having seen it for so long, and will convey that to her with all sincerity and
If she kind of entices you and like eggs you on into like more and more poetic ways of describing those feelings, would you talk to her about it over like the next 20 minutes or like a half hour?
for sure.
Gotcha. So she's gonna kind of like pull this from you, just like hearing about the sun. And after a while, like in this kind of, it's still a give and take conversation. She's still very much like the mind of a young child who just, it's like that, oh man, what's the kid question? Well, why? And you give like an explanation. Why? and you give an explanation why. She's got that very innocent like drive just to continue the conversation. And you guys have that kind of like give and take. You'll eventually kind of pick out some of the information that she shares will kind of be to the effect of like, Erythalas was a great wizard, one of the 12 who ruled in Yithrin, not like the others who have turned into these creatures. They're lesser wizards. Um, Kind of like little bits of information like that. She doesn't necessarily have a whole lot to share, but she'll kind of continue on things, trying to keep you guys there as long as possible. But all of you can kind of recognize on some level this is still like a dead end conversation. Even if every once in a while you can learn little bits more, the more time you commit to kind of hanging out with and talking with her. She's just not forward with information here.
Right. So I think after, half an hour, 40 minutes, Fenn will see that the gig is up and the trickle of information is not worth the time spent. And we'll get up and send his regrets again that we cannot stay. We have responsibilities, just as you have to protect the grove. We have responsibilities that we must.
Hathawin, if Erlithos created you, why has he not created a companion to share the grove with you?
If you recall, he kind of spoke about that she's the last of the forest that lives. That many others have already died. These trees represent her, not so much as she represented the whole forest. Um, so there's a certain level of maybe she'll like recount it again, and it's kind of like a very heartfelt and kind of like hesitant level of speaking about it. Because this is kind of like recollecting a lost loved one. But over like 20 minutes or so, Catherine would kind of like pull your attention to some of the other types of trees that would have grown here, and all of them being relatively special in their own light, especially from the likeness of a human. Many elves would be able to recognize some of the like lost trees of ages past. Um, One of those kind of recognitions that like the world itself almost spins at a different speed when you have humans on it, versus elves who lived for so long. Tending to trees for much longer was not necessarily like so difficult. But for a human, you're talking about 6 to 10 generations to have like one of these pear trees like come to fruit. So she kind of talks about that, but she'll definitely converse with you another like 20 minutes or so about. And maybe towards the end of kind of discussing things, um, you'll kind of like pick up uh Erythalas is a great wizard, but he isn't the same anymore. Roll an Arcana check. And this can be for both of the wizards. I think from our actual discussions together, this might fit enough to recognize that Brennick, you're not surprised to hear some of the trappings of a pretty typical like lust for power lust to live forever. And some of the costs of those things are costs that you have to pay into on a regular basis. And to not have the costs in order to pay, you start to pay with your own self. And it eventually creates a creature that is not its original self and is very much far from it. Are you familiar at all with what I might be describing, Justin?
I think so.
So I would say it is perfectly fine for you, Justin, to recognize it for Brennick, the actual player. So if you have this in mind, you can know that information from the way she describes Irithalas and the way she answers why he cannot weave the same magic that he once wove.
Yeah, so Brannick is towards like looking to Fen and Valixis, and then kind of looking down the uh towards the start of the passageway. Um, kind of as he learns a little bit more about Erlithas, he's going to perhaps we should heed our friend's advice here and leave well enough alone.
Melissa's eyes were glistening at the thought of her, that it was another wizard. So she kind of actually suggests that we check it out real quick, and if he's not the same, more than likely if he is still alive, he's more than likely is not going to be as powerful. He might have answers for us that we may seek, or he actually, and as he thinks about it, or he may be the vampire that we're looking for. I mean, if he is the vampire we're looking for, regardless of which, we're going to end up having to go back that way. So I suggest we check it out at least.
This is not the sort of creature you converse with, Alexis.
We have fire.
So what say you, Fen?
Um, in matters of the arcane, I would have to trust you to decide between what kind of creature exactly, or what kind of properties is this creature that we're discussing? This Erlithos?
So I'm assuming so Brannick would know the word, right? Because I hopefully I'm thinking of the right thing.
You can name it. Part of why I didn't give you the name is because if you name the wrong thing, like that's still going to be what Brannick describes to them.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So Brannick, it sounds like this Erlithos has sought lichdom. Those are not creatures to be tangled with lightly. All that I've heard. I would strongly suggest Alexis we leave well enough alone.
In this, I trust your judgment, Brannick.
Valine's going to look to you all and say, a lich or not, we have come this far. Do you not want to explore Yithrin from its doorsteps?
Alexis will look at Brennan and go, for someone who seeks power, you tend to avoid the opportunity to see it quite often.
I simply choose not to rush headlong into danger. One cannot wield power when one is, well, dead. But if well, lead the way, Felixus.
And she just kind of like slowly starts walking down the pathway, making sure to check every corner.
Before she turns to head off, Fen is going to say, I see the value in both your judgments, but Felixus, remember, you have had some serious issue with two mimics, so perhaps a little bit more of Felixus in you, Brannick, and a little bit more of Brannick in you, Felixus. Temperance.
I know I had my bad luck with them, but I mean, third time's the charm.
Have to admire that optimism.
I'm kidding. I know I'll be careful. I'm not trying to die again.
So do we have Velixis leading down that hall?
Yep, Brannick is following, but some ways behind.
Velixis has a light source. Be it a torch or light from Valine.
I think it's still the same light source we had. I think it's still that light from Valine.
Gotcha. So, if everybody heads in there, how far back do you expect you're going, Brennick? Are you staying inside of the light, like 20 feet or so? Are you staying, like, outside of the light?
Yeah, he'll stay at like the very edge of the light, but he doesn't want to be in darkness. So yeah, about 20 feet.
Gotcha. So, you all are going to head down this very narrow corridor. It is going to snake back and forth for quite some time. You are going to continue down this way for quite some time without any cracks that kind of lead off in any other directions here. Until eventually you are going to find that you are in a massive cavernous hall. You can see pretty much through this whole area because at the center of this there is a gigantic black spire, and at its base there is a golden glow that's kind of casting out from this object. And this entire area, for maybe about like a quarter of a mile in each direction, is all just a huge open cavern. It's maybe a little bit more kind of oblong than it is purely circular. You can see at the base of this structure, it is a spire that kind of is in the center of this massive disc that sits wedged into the ice. So you can see most of it coming from above it on the ice where you all are. And you're kind of like looking down at this large, what is effectively the city of Yithrin in front of you. The glow of gold from the center of it will cast light out from the center. The rest of the city is without light. So when you get closer towards the edges, things are darker, but it does cast at least enough light that you can kind of see like where the ice above it is very smooth. It has some striations to it, but they're still very smooth. Again, kind of with like that orange idea. Like if you had a peeled orange, you can see differences in like one, what is it, the latitude is the vertical lines. Like you can see the difference in one like segment of orange between like the areas where it'll split. The ice does that same things where it almost like comes to little like supporting ridges in between these massive, like this massive circle that kind of cuts around it. But as you all are looking over this area, you're coming from kind of the southwest, and you're kind of looking across. Oh, I might actually have set up the measuring on this. So one block is 50 feet. I did not. But there we go. That should be on it now. May not be extremely accurate, but that's probably roughly close. No, what is that? 120 per the 200. So it's a little bit long. So one block's probably like 40 or so feet. But you all are coming from that southwest, and you're kind of looking over this whole city ahead of you. You've effectively found Yithrin. You guys have the city before you. You can see at least an object that is glowing and emitting magical force right away. Do you all have any initial thoughts at present?
I'm trying to get my jaw off the floor right now.
Alexis is surprised, and she's now looking around to see a way down into the city.
Braddock is kind of like grudgingly is like kind of muttering under his breath, like, this was right. Not willing to tell her that, so he'll but he's similarly like I kind of eyes wide as he takes this in. And now he's gonna move kind of move closer into the light of the whatever Velixis is carrying.
Gotcha. So Velixis would probably be heading a little bit more like steadfast, where you've got Brennick and Fen kind of like almost pausing, kind of like losing track of time as you kind of like look over this site. And you'll have Valine kind of walking past you, and she'll like be basically right behind Velixis as the two of you spend a little bit of effort to kind of like move a little bit quicker. But you guys can see ahead of you that there is ice coming out of this area. It leads onto the side of this place, right between two of these spired structures. When you guys come across those spires that are on either side of that kind of like tongue-like walkway, these are the spires that you guys met Dazan inside of. So like that whole map where you were like exploring that area with Dazan takes place in less than what you guys see here on one of these sides. Again, to give you like a little bit of perspective on what this map is ahead of you. This is a massive city, where it has hundreds of places that you can explore ahead of you.
Velixis, when she looks her way down, as soon as she finds one, she immediately, being Velixis, starts running off running around to see into the city to explore, while everybody else is still kind of stuck in shock at what they just found.
Alrighty, what are you running for? Where are you going? Like where you can see where it kind of sets there. There's a little like kind of district there to your left. There's a district there to your right. There are other objects a little bit closer.
She goes to the district to the left, and she goes to that first building. Let me see if I can circle it.
I mean, I'm assuming we're all together. Do we see any populace?
There's no movement from inside of this place.
No birds, no animals, no nothing. Just stillness and the
Yep.
magical aura.
Exactly. It would probably be eerily still, But you guys are still inside of the glacier. You're still, hundreds of feet beneath the ice.
Yeah, so Brannick is going to kind of just like shaking his head again, but he will move to kind of follow after Velixis. He might kind of like calling out like Velixis, wait, should stick together. And kind of just from like a glancing around at the buildings, does he see any immediately obvious damage, like exterior damage to the like the closest buildings? Essentially, he's wondering like, did this thing? Is this like the others that kind of crashed, or is it almost like the glacier grew up around it or got built up around it?
Much of this place is definitely in ruins. I think you're probably seeing more buildings have like collapsed walls and structures in kind of like the minute level of this. If you guys explored a little bit more, you might see that the eastern side took a little bit more of a brunt effect of the damage, as it effectively crashed. I guess really this is kind of at a slant with north is northwest, like top right of this picture. So it kind of crashed into the snow, like on the northeastern side of it. So you'll see more damage to outer structures when you head out there. But like when you start to head into just the closest building, you're just going to find a pretty austere building. Nothing much more than kind of living quarters, made of very similar black stone. But as far as things go, there's not like artifacts left behind. Everything seems to be kind of like rotted into like dust and almost like ash. But as you start to explore that area, you see uh, one arm of that massive central spire comes down into this area, and there's actually an entryway into that arm that is coming down, as well as one of these other buildings near there. That seems to be like a hardened shelter. From the outside, it's probably one of the only buildings that doesn't actually show signs of like physical damage around it. And you can kind of see like some like armored gates and things.
Well, after hearing Brendan call out to her, she kind of yells back, "Keep up! There's a lot here to explore." And of course, after exploring the buildings around and seeing that they're mostly in ruins with nothing and to find, and then seeing the spire, she kind of heads towards it to check for that and see when she sees the entrance. She turns back to Brennick and Finn and lets them know there's an entrance over here in the spire. Do y'all want to try to go inside and explore, or what? Because it seems like most of the buildings out here are ruined with nothing to find.
Brannick will kind of nod as he kind of is looking over this kind of arm as well. And this the only kind of light that we've seen from that kind of orange glow seems to be emanating from the big kind of central spire. So he'll nod and follow after Velixis towards the towards that entrance.
You said there was another building that was relatively intact with armored gates on it.
Yeah, just like a little bit to the west of that leg of the spire.
while we're here, just can we walk by it to get a closer look?
Yeah, so you can approach kind of this like strengthened gate. Getting a little bit closer, you can kind of see that the portcullis is like askewed. It's about like a 40-foot or so wide, like large. um it's still stone. It very much resembles like the construct of something like dwarves would make out of metal, where you actually have like a latticed, like metal gate where the metal is wrapped around itself. The others can kind of recognize that this is like formed with spell work to kind of make like the mesh like latticing of the stone. But you can see this massive gate. It's slightly askewed, kind of looking through things. Um, Hardened location. It's like either like a military base or some sort of like prison or containment area. Do you want to enter and look around?
Yeah.
And Brannick is also he's good with when Fen kind of points out or suggests that he will kind of break off from heading immediately for the spire and follow after Fen.
Gotcha. And does Velixis follow?
Yeah, when Valencia sees them head off to the other building, she kind of calls out, "Hey, where y'all going?" She kind of just runs after them into the building.
We're going to the spire, but it was a quick detour. It's actually
Gotcha.
it's on the way.
Let me get a D20 roll. Just the first person to roll. All right. So as you all are going through this business or this building, you're going to start to notice that there are like cells in this place. That very quickly you'll see that this is indeed a prison of sort meant for holding and keeping people contained. One of the first things that you all will find is basic signs that it's abandoned. There's very little remaining. Many things are kind of scattered across the floor, just like paper things and everything that seems like trash. Velixis, probably being Velixis, would see a little small globe about the size of her paw, and probably run over to grab it. But there's a globe that's kind of sitting in one of the corner, and you guys are going to hear the muttering of a creature that is speaking in Larosian, the language of the Netheril, which is basically Elvish. As far as hearing it goes, understanding it is a little bit beyond what the two of you can do, as you just simply hear it.
Does
Whenever
does the muttering seem to be coming from the globe? Can we tell where it's coming from?
Roll a perception check. You can't help but wonder if it's coming from the globe. It's definitely hard to tell when you're inside of a place that's like monolithic stone. So, like, sound transfers really weird here as well.
ugh, I hate that. Um, when Valencia does pick up the stone, because yeah, she definitely does. It's shiny. Does it feel weird? Is it like when she goes to check the stone? Does there anything she can tell about the stone that may be weird or off per se, like any magical properties, or if is it giving off any kind of warm glow or anything like that?
It's going to feel perfectly cold for what it should feel in a place like this, which for you probably does not register as anything at all. It's a very smooth, round object. You can roll an Arcana check to try to figure out what sort of magical properties you can glean from it. You are very quickly going to hear Professor Scott start to speak about this object, and you're kind of going to recognize everything that he's saying as kind of true as the resident explication device. Professor Scott is going to be kind of speaking. Oh, a drift globe. How fascinating. You can use this as a light source if you would care to. It should be very valuable in dark places if you were ever to find yourself in one.
Neat. And she just kind of goes and puts it in her pocket, along with all her other little trinkets and treasures that she's been collecting.
Could probably bit of extra light now.
As he's continuing to talk about the drift globe, you guys hear that muttering kind of pause for a moment, and then you hear the muttering kind of getting closer and closer to you.
So Brannick's gonna turn to the others. Perhaps we should leave.
Come on, we just got here. Let's explore some more. And she kind of just shakes her head, kind of violently, like a child that's just that she found one treasure. Now she wants to find more. It's kind of grabs Brannick to prevent him from leaving so quickly, and so it's kind of pulls him further into the building.
So when you all kind of continue to talk and Valixis goes to pull you away, you all are going to kind of turn around and notice that behind you there is a skull floating in the air. And instead of having eyes, it has gems inside of the eyes. And each of these gems are like glowing with this faint yellow green light. And as you guys kind of stand up in front of them, there's like a flash of purple that crosses over, and then they go over to this like warm orange, and you're just going to hear in the air as like the muttering ceases. Apprentice, you're needed. I require. Apprentice, have you brought? I require. You there? I require something. You were bringing it to me. Tell me what it was. Tell me what I require. You there. Now. Answer me.
Alexis kind of looks at him awkwardly, like, I want to take the skull with me, especially with the gems. And she kind of turns towards Brennick and Fan, but he seems a little cuckoo. I still want to take him with us, but any of y'all have any idea what it is he's looking for?
So is the floating skull speaking in common, or is it in actually in speaking in Larosian?
This is speaking in your head.
Gotcha.
All of you understand this. All of you are being yelled at. Valine's going to kind of just like stand forward in front of the rest of you all. You have just sent us away. We were returning shortly. We will be but just a little bit longer. You're gonna hear kind of again like yelling into your heads. Yes, just a little bit longer. And the skull's gonna kind of like start to float away, and it's gonna start to move through like different rooms in this place. And you start to hear the muttering again. What was it I was searching? And the mutterings kind of like continue on a little bit longer. You were going to bring it to me. And then you like can't hear this thing. And then like a minute later, you'll hear it kind of like once again, just like exploding into your head. And it's just kind of asking a senseless question. And you can kind of gather that this is something that exists, but its mind is completely gone. Professor Scott will start to. Oh, well, it appears we've just met Irithalas. It would assume that having attempted to become a lich, he forgot to feed his phylactery some souls. He probably requires souls. Would you like to tell him that you are going to get him souls?
Demi-lich. I should have realized that sooner.
Valis kind of turns to Brennick and says, "Wait, so he attempted to become a lich, so he's just a partial lich right now?"
Becoming a lich is a very difficult practice, and among the most dangerous of the activity is that you must never forget that you have a cost to pay, and the payment must always occur, for it is only your own soul that will be consumed if you err and forget to feed your phylactery. A lich is doomed almost inevitably. There's been tales of such liches that roam the multiverse that have risen beyond. But to pay the costs, this is the most common end. To become immortal, but also not yourself.
Valis starts to kind of clap her hands together like lightly and quickly, and she kind of gets excited. Wait. So liches are basically wizards. Would he have a spell book?
Most likely, yes.
We should find it. We should find it quickly.
Brennick's going to kind of like gesture with his kind of arm around like kind of the entirety of the thing, and I think it quickly could be difficult. Perhaps we should make our way to that spire. In mind, we probably don't want to feed that thing any. Really didn't want to feed it my soul.
I mean, yes, but I don't think it could get any souls on its own right now, so I don't think it'd be able to take our souls. I mean, if it could, it wouldn't send people out to get souls, right? And I'm pretty sure as a wizard myself, he would probably keep his spell book close Come on. Can we search just a little bit more? Please? She's pleading. She kind of does puppy dog eyes.
You think it keeps this spellbook in this prison? Then, by all means, Felixus.
Melissa kind of goes into one and starts checking like some of the rooms nearby. And she kind of peeks into the room where the skull went to see if it might be in there with him right now.
Roll a perception check. It's still wandering around this general area, but it is not still inside of the actual prison. But it's, just kind of beyond the grounds here. You can kind of see occasionally this thing kind of like stops, spins around for a moment, and then kind of moves along in a different direction.
Hi. All right, let's go. Says he returns to the group disappointed.
Rennick will suggest they start heading again towards that little kind of like appendage that leads up to the spire.
And Melissa kind of starts to follow behind. I think at the door though, she kind of like has like a thought, and she immediately turns around and casts detect magic over the prison real quick before completely leaving.
All right, so what are you doing? You're casting detect magic and then running through the prison?
She stops at the prison door and casts detect magic over the prison, like in the immediate vicinity. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you can cast detect magic. There's nothing immediately magical around you.
Right. I was so sure that would work. All right. And she just disappointed again. She kind of turns and continues to follow them towards the spire.
Well, detect magic is only 30 feet, right? So it's not like it covers the whole prison. That's why I think he was asking, searching through the prison again now that you've cast it, or
Yeah, like detect magic is something as you're moving around, you can detect more. The prison gate is not giving off anything magical, is effectively what you learned.
Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, so yeah, all right. Then yeah, she kind of runs back through each area just in case, as much as the prison as possible. She kind of, Brandon said, I can get up with y'all in a bit if y'all want to go up ahead. The place, aside from the skull, seems completely abandoned. I don't think we'll run into any trouble. If I do, I'll fire off a one shot for you. And she just kind of beelines it back into the prison and starts going through each and every room as quickly as possible.
Roll a d20.
Ben's gonna wait at the gate.
actually, Brannick is going to move to ritually start casting detect magic as Elixis runs off, but he is otherwise staying with Ven.
Gotcha. So the two of you are like hanging out by the doorway.
Yeah.
All right. So I think while you're running through the prison again, you will eventually come across a little stone kind of like a tablet almost. It's like a chunk of frieze that would be like along the kind of like outer like lintel of the building, kind of like above like a colonnade. You would have like the frieze just as like almost like a foot tall kind of section there. And this is kind of like a poetic verse where you will see in like illusion magic. This thing seems to be written, and it will say, meditation in the hall of the weightless wonder was an invaluable pursuit for the city's elite.
I'm saying this arena is she takes a note of it, and she kind of looks around one last time, um, and if she doesn't find anything else, you said that the okay, to make sure I understand, you said the ice was an illusion, like the ice block was an illusion.
Nope, the whole tablet. It's like a stone. Basically, Chris. Damn it! I fucking lost it again. Chardolin.
Okay, so she kind of after she makes a note of what she read, she kind of like steps through it, or steps through the illusion.
It's a stone block. It's there's you're holding it.
Oh, oh no, she puts that in her bag. She puts it in her bag, and she heads back towards the group.
So eventually gathering back up. Um, you're probably minutes away from finishing. But like well into like 6 or so minutes at least. Are you going to finish up casting yourself, Brennick?
Yes.
Are the others, are you going to wait for him at the kind of point where he's casting? Or you guys can.
We're stick together.
And is Valixis waiting as well?
Oh yeah, Valixis is gonna wait.
Gotcha. So you'll have Valine, pretty kind of high tension, looking around and keeping an eye out to see if you all see any further signs of Irithalas. You can spend these next few minutes going by. By the time Brennick will finish casting, your detect magic will wear off. And when his finishes, he too will see there's nothing especially magical. You would be able to notice, I don't know the school of magic that a drift globe is, but besides just the drift globe on Valixis also has um, a chunk of something, effectively like a 8x10 piece of rock that is emitting illusory magic.
So Brannick, as he finishes up, he'll kind of give a nod to the others and kind of suggest we start making our way towards the spire again. But as he starts moving, he'll be like kind of looking to Valixis, like, what else did you find?
Valixis would take out the shard and show it to him.
And does the illusory writing, does that appear for Brannick as well if he takes a look at the shard or the freeze chunk?
As far as you can tell, like rubbing your fingers over this, you can actually like read the writing. Um, this goes back to the same thing where technically things are written in Dwarvish and they are Elvish words. So realistically, even Velixis doesn't actually know what it means. Um, yeah, let's go for the illusory magic is that you guys actually understand this. But you can actually feel the ruins on this thing. This is actual rock. There's not like an illusion here. And maybe when you guys do come to understand what the illusion is simply that you guys can look at this rock and understand what it says.
Gotcha.
But effectively, you can feel the same surface as you see on this thing. There's not like a hidden something behind it.
Interesting curiosity, Felix's. Then he'll hand it back. And then kind of again gesture towards the spire. Charlie.
She puts the stone back in her bag, and she said, "Yes, I wonder what else we can find." And she explains, "This is technically, effectively, well, this is ruined, so there's bound to be a good bit of treasures here, something of some kind."
So when you all head towards that long like appendage almost of this spire, and you get close to the base of it, you'll see that it has almost like flowing layers to it, where there's like multiple tunnels that kind of like lay across the ground, and you can kind of see those striations like continue up this long curvature of this arm coming out of the main spire. Everything seems very kind of organic, where you can kind of see like something is often like raised out of the thing below it, and you start from a point and it gets larger, and you're kind of doing things like that where it's getting larger, getting smaller, but you kind of start to see these like orders to how things are constructed. As you approach, Jarek or Brannick, you will recognize that there is abjuration magic across the front of this, and you will see that there are 12 runes around the kind of lintel of each of these, and each of these little tubes almost has the same like abjuration magic across it, and these same 12 runes.
Ronick will note that to the others. Suggest these may be warded, protected somehow. Not surprising.
Make a Arcana check from both of the wizards here. As you all kind of like come to and start to look over these things, you might have each of like the three wizards kind of like calling out their school of magic before the other. But as you all continue to look over these things, you can see that these runes that are placed around this abjuration magic represent the 12 schools of magic. And you can basically spot that there is effectively, was it abjuration, evocation, divination, necromancy, illusion, blah 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 blah, and on and on and on.
But does it seem, and it seems to be the one entryway that the runes are surrounding.
Like the striations that like make up the different little corridors for this thing, like they all attach together to make like the one arm, but they're each tubes. So like the central tube is the top, to the right of it is a tube, and to the left of it is a tube, and each of them kind of like rest underneath it. I think there's probably like 7 of these that kind of like make a circle at the base, but effectively each of them will give off abjuration magic, and each of them has like the 12 runes of the schools like in the lintel like above them.
Gotcha. Okay.
We could each step underneath one, see what happens.
We'd be separated.
Yes, I think best to stick together, Elixis.
So, then which one should we take? I mean, we're here to explore, right? I mean, we just stand here pondering it. I don't go anywhere.
I agree this is an exciting find, but we do need to have a modicum of caution at least. But by all means, after you, Elixis.
I say we take this pipe, right? This entryway right here for the School of Evocation. Let's see where it goes. I see.
What are you saying?
I was going to say she begins to try to lead the others over to the underneath the School of Evocation symbol.
Like they all have all of the same school symbols above them. Every one of them is the same look. They're all like a cylinder. They all have the abjuration magic like blocking them, and they all have all 12 schools. So there's not one for evocation. There's not one for abjuration. They all look the same. But when you go to step through the doorway and into this tunnel, you're just going to hit a wall, stop, probably stumble backwards. There's abjuration magic keeping you from walking into this thing.
Tell you it was likely warded.
Well, there must be another way in.
You wouldn't happen to have a spell to remove spells, would you?
I could try to dispel it. And magic may be rather powerful, but I can try.
All right, if you want to try that, we can. It may help. Unless y'all want to try and search for another entryway, but who knows how long that may take. We know that this is an entryway, at the very least.
They all seem similarly warded, but so Brannick will, focusing his attention on the one that Velixis had already tried to step through, will move to attempt. He will actually. He'll suggest that perhaps he back up a little bit, um, and then he will move to attempt to cast a spell magic on the abjuration magic that he senses.
What level are you casting at?
Uh, third level.
So I believe you are casting it at a DC 19. If you would like to make your spell check.
It's just intelligence check, right?
I think your spell check ends up being with your proficiency bonus.
Uh, yeah, ability check using your spell casting ability. Okay, yeah, so intelligence. Yeah.
So you're going to prepare to cast the spell magic, and as you kind of finish weaving this spell, you're going to kind of look to this base and see the magic remains.
Yeah, Brannick will shake his head, turn back. Or, as I feared, it's quite powerful. Perhaps Finn is right. Perhaps we keep exploring. Perhaps we might find another way in or some other way to disable the wards.
I thought 12 sounded wrong. There's 8 schools of magic.
Well, I guess you could. There's always the
Yeah, once you get into like the chronomancy,
yeah,
gravity magic.
yeah, and like what sanguinomancy or whatever the blood magic one is.
Sweet, sweet blood magic.
But yeah, so Brannick will shake his head and suggest we, perhaps Fenn is right. Perhaps we look for another way. I mean, there's much more to explore here. We may have to come back later.
Alexis kind of puts her hands to her chin and kind of thinks for a moment. I mean, I have a way that could get all 4 of us at least up to the top of that building if you're willing to do it. I'm not sure how y'all are with heights, however.
I wouldn't recommend that. If there's warding here, who knows what else, what other sorts of defenses there are. As I said, I suggest we get at least a bit of caution until we know exactly what we're dealing with here.
Very well. Now, when we came over to the city the first time, I did spot something else underneath the arched towers, kind of like a yellow orb energy source. That might be. Maybe we could check that out. That might be a safer entry point. So from here, I'm not sure how. Well, I mean, we can follow the tube over there, but what do you think?
I am curious about that. What that might be. Brannick will suggest we should just be able to essentially make our way kind of east, or I guess it's more kind of southeast, where we are, kind of the base here. Pass through these buildings. We, if we want to look inside them while we're here.
So when you all move away from those spires and kind of make your way a little bit closer towards the central area. Fen is going to recognize that one of the buildings to the east of you, it's kind of one of the buildings that's like in between like the large like eggs that make these little districts, that kind of stands like alone. It's a large spire unto itself, has one of these symbols of one of these schools of magic on it. Once he kind of shows it to you all, Valine at very least, and the other two of you can certainly understand. This is the School of Abjuration.
Perhaps we should thank you, Fen, pointing that out. Perhaps we should investigate in there.
Agreed. Maybe there's a way to open up that entryway in there safely. At the very least. Who knows? And Felix starts walking towards the tower.
And I would imagine by now, Brannick's detect magic only lasts, I think, for 10 minutes. So I assume by the time we get there, it's probably faded.
Yeah, I assume sometime around actually casting that disenchant is when you'd probably lose it. Between like actually spending time investigating and a little bit of caution before eventually poking at the actual abjuration.
Gotcha. Okay. So yeah, maybe like right after he casts it and he realizes it didn't work, because then it kind of fades away. But yeah. But yeah, he will. Yeah, he's with Felixis, heading towards the this smaller spire here.
Felix does cast another detect magic on herself though, so that she can check from the beginning for any artifacts or anything magical in here as they begin searching it.
So the runes of this place again are like a claw kind of coming up. Very similar construction to the spire you all first met Dazan in. You see as it kind of like reaches up at a talon, almost facing towards that central spire. Very similar, like stone construction of the Chardolin. Only this place you can actually see kind of like chiseled runes like left into the stone, and a soft like blue light kind of shines from its outer face that faces out towards kind of the entry in the ice where you all originally came from. Um, Getting close to this place, you're going to see an aurora of abjuration magic as you approach it. When you get closer and start to walk around, you'll see pretty much every inch of the lower section of this place. Everything that is close to you is glowing with abjuration magic.
As we get closer and into the building, what I do explain this to Finn and Brennick what's happening with what I'm detecting with the detect magic.
Seems as if almost the entire our structure is perhaps similarly warded. I would like to get inside, but I'm thinking perhaps we continue our outer explorations for now. I can only attempt what I have so many times.
That sounds like a good idea. Um, so Melissa's kind of suggests that they head towards that center again, towards that giant yellow sphere that they saw.
Gotcha. So you head back towards the center. You guys have a pretty good view. You can see kind of like the glow of this yellow object. It's pretty bright. It would be blinding for Velixis at that point. Um, be pretty kind of like shockingly bright for the others. Um, Looking towards it makes it difficult to be able to see anything else around this area. Um, as it's uh so bright, like at its center point. When you all get close to the like feet of the spire, once again you are going to start to see the glow of abjuration magic, and with that Velixis will be able to kind of trace kind of to either side, um at least for a first few minutes here. You could go in either direction and start to circle around the spire, and you are going to find that the spire is protected by the same magic that prevents you from walking into the tubes that you encountered before.
Does this like massive kind of glowing thing, does it seem to be giving off just light, or do we sense any heat coming off it, kind of similar to the cube back, like the smaller cube back in the uh
Roll a perception. From what you can tell, how cold you are in this place, it's not enough heat to make you feel any different. The heat in that room was pretty obvious, so it's kind of a weird level of like, I think maybe you're tricking your mind and you're feeling warmer, despite like still not being able to feel your fingers, kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yep. Yeah, psychosomatically he's trying to warm himself. Yeah.
And how about this building to the south of that with the big dome? Can you describe that a little bit?
Roll a d20 for me. Alrighty. So when you start to look into that area, you're going to find that yeah, it's got a sweet like hexagonal dome. The outsides of that one look pretty sturdy, as if they took very little damage from things. But when you look inside and you see that this place is like um, a garden of dead statues, you can see that the actual impact unseated a lot of what is effectively these Chardin statues that fill this place. There's a few that still rest on their pedestals. Many have at least like tumbled over, so they're at like 45-degree angles. But a very quick glance inside of this place, and you can see that it's just filled with statues. Do you want to look further inside of there?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Do you want to look further than just like a first impression that it's like a statue garden, basically?
No, just cursory glance doesn't seem anything, unless somebody else says appears to be filled with Chardolin statues.
Brennick is kind of curious to see whether it's is it like one large chamber? Is there any sign of if we like stepping inside of any like entryways or corridors leading off into any other areas, or is it kind of one big open space?
The quintessential museum for me is natural history in Central Park, where you like walk into it and your first view is basically this like grand hall, and you have a option to kind of go to the right or go to the left. And I think that's kind of what this will be. Your like first view walking in makes it look like, yeah, this is just the room. But as you kind of like come to terms with all of these like fallen over statues, you start to notice like the right side of the room much clearer, and you can actually see that there's kind of like a way that you can like zigzag through the walls to get to another area. And then once you see that, you can look over to the left and see very symmetrically there's a similar kind of like shutter in the wall where you can walk through it, but it just has statues kind of like tumbled across it. Um, but otherwise, it's a very large room that seems to have at least places that you can go beyond this one.
Yeah, Brennick is curious about maybe there's other types of art, or if this is a museum, you tell them something about civilization, even just more for curiosity than expecting to find anything useful. Um, but he will suggest we just, yeah, maybe they take some time, check out a couple of the side passages, or the one of the go towards the right, and just take a little bit of a deeper look in.
Is everybody following Brennick in?
Oh yeah, Volix is falling behind when we suggest to look further inside.
Yeah. Or we need information.
Gotcha. Roll another d20 for me, Brennick. As you all start to go through and are exploring a little bit more through this place, you're not going to find anything that seems like starkly valuable information. A lot of these figures seem to be wizards. Between Scott and Valine, you can certainly put some effort into figuring out some of their names. None of them seem to necessarily like jump out for any reason. I think realistically, most people might only know one Netherese wizard's name. But in the long run, you're kind of just going through this list where it's going to come to terms that most of these people are recognized for their school of magic, just as much as perhaps their own name kind of has glory. And you'll kind of figure out like the easier passageway to get to seems to almost be like a kind of hall of valor, almost like oscillating between the schools. And maybe you see that like evocation tends to win a little bit more than like illusory, but you often have like divination and like abjuration up towards the top. And you can kind of see like a trend in there's like a little bit of like competitive kind of honoring of kind of like the top wizards perhaps for each of these years. Um, if you go back through and you look in the more difficult side, it'll probably be another like 20 minutes or so. Does that sound interesting to you all? Or do you think you would leave?
Yeah, Brennick is still curious. Yeah.
Everybody following?
Yes.
Yep.
Let me get a d20 from Valixis here. As you guys kind of start to head through this like second area, you're going to see this tends to be actual grouped by the schools, where you're actually seeing almost like 8 different rooms that you're kind of like snaking through, and this exhibit is like the presentation of the 8 schools. But you are very quickly going to recognize again, like, this is not a society of people. This is a society of wizards. When they put somebody in stone to recognize them forever, they're a wizard. There's nobody special here except for wizards. But yeah, you guys can kind of come through recognizing the museum. There's a lot of information that you can kind of pick up, but in the long run, is it necessarily the type of thing that's going to help you figure out where you're at? Not really.
Purely academic.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing where you're talking about like ancient, and then it's a civilization of ancient. Um, I think it's one of those things to like remember that like Cleopatra was closer to our time frame than the building of the Great Pyramids. Like, to recognize how long Egyptian history goes for can really astonish anybody from the New World. When you talk about how old Europe is young compared to that. And it's kind of the same thing when you talk about the age of like some of the actual Chinese culture. You're talking about stuff that makes the West look young. And you guys are walking through a place that makes you really feel that because it's history of people who lived. I think the Netherese are like 3 to 4 thousand years before where you guys are right now. I think 3,000 years.
Yeah, so Brannick is clearly pretty fascinated by this. Probably, just definitely spends a little more time looking over the divination related aspects, but eventually is kind of realizes that this might be exciting for him. It's not really what they're here for, and will get moved to kind of make his way out. Do you guys hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, it went quiet for a little bit. I wasn't sure if
Yeah,
the
I guess
connection
we'll
went
just
bad.
continue counterclockwise, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, leaving the museum building. Um, yeah, and then heading kind of almost like with the idea to do a circle around this bigger spire and see if
Yeah.
anything else catches our eye.
The next bar, yep. And on after that, if for Mara, if he's still there.
Yeah, Mara, if you've been speaking, we can't hear you. No, he said he was having some issues with the push to talk. I think some computer issues before. So
Yeah, it happens. You still out there, Velixus?
Oh yeah, I'm still here. I'm still here.
but I actually just got to step away for a minute. If Mara comes back, just let him know. I'll be back in a minute.
Yeah, well, I'll suggest this is the 15-minute break.
Oh, can you hear me right now, Justin?
Now we can. Justin stepped away for a minute.
Man, I asked if we could take a break, and that was probably what did not come through.
You know what's hilarious? That it didn't, and Finn suggested that we go ahead and take a break until you could figure out what was going on with the technical issues because we thought something was wrong, which it wasn't coming through.
Yep, I stopped probably like 8 minutes ago. I think it was like 2 minutes 52, and I was like, let's take a break until 6:10. Yeah, my bad, guys. I must have not come through on that exact part. I started to open some files to look for something in particular. But yeah, take a break if you guys need a little bit longer. Do that. But otherwise, yeah.
Yep, no worries. I'll be back in a few.
Alrighty. My apologies there. Yeah, I must have clicked into my file program and muted myself basically by clicking out. So when I said let's take a break, nobody heard me. My apologies. I'm glad Don thought it though.
Figured to be the perfect time.
I like said like a whole speech. I'm like, oh man, it's like 6 o'clock. I'm beat up right now. I need a drink. So you've searched through this little bit of a museum here, looking around when you guys all go to see what's around you. Let me get some perception checks here from you all. And again, this would be a disadvantage for Felix. As the great magic user that Fen is, kind of looking around, Fen can spot that there is another spire to the east of the museum with another one of these symbols on it. Kind of looking towards it, you all can recognize the spire to your east is the Tower of Transmutation. My bad. Was somebody going to say something?
Oh, sorry, Brannick was just gonna as like kind of. I feel like Brannick's almost like there's so much to look at. He's having difficulty focusing on any one thing. So when Ben again kind of brings his attention to this tower, and he recognizes the symbol, and then he's thinking like, do you think there's one of these for every school? I think perhaps they have something to do with the way into that main spire.
As Veline kind of like goes to question Professor Scott about the schools, she's kind of like trying to look for any information that he might have on the Netheril and like their worship of the schools. But eventually she'll get kind of frustrated with how he like encyclopedically just recites the last thing that she talked about and just kind of looking back towards Brennick. It has to mean something. Their school of wizards or their society of wizards, we need to look to the schools. Kind of looking around from where you guys are next to the museum, you can spot of the outside spires, probably about 15 or so, but you can see that inside of the actual city, there's a lot of other higher locations. Among them, you've got spires, like one is kind of underneath and almost right behind the tubes that you were near, um, the one that you already know for abjuration. There's one just south of the museum that is inside of that same block, and then basically two that are to the kind of east of the museum here. But you can see a few others on the other side of the spire as well. Like they circle this entire area.
Perhaps if we were to go, perhaps we should go to one of the towers and cast a spell that is adjacent, that is correspondent to that tower, and maybe that we get some sort of reaction.
That's I think that's worth a shot.
All right, now I was thinking about that. Here's the issue with all the tower. If all the towers are connected to opening this thing, um, one, we could go to each tower and do it, and it opens up. Or two, it turns out that each one needs to happen simultaneously. That would be the issue. Because remember, this place used to have a lot more people, so they probably had a way to communicate with each other whenever they need to close towers, close it or opening it. So that would definitely be a bit of a challenge. So I don't think it'll be impossible for us to do it. Just
Given the we saw in the museum, that Hall of Valor, it seems that the wizards of this Netherese wizards, perhaps they specialized more in schools than common currently. Perhaps I think perhaps you're onto something. Perhaps if we go to one of these specific schools towers, we're able to find a way inside. Perhaps by, as you said, trying a spell from the school, or um, perhaps if we can get inside one of these, we might learn a bit more about how we might access those tubes.
Well, didn't you say the tubes were guarded by abjuration magic?
Yes, though I'm thinking of those. Each tube also seemed to have the runes for each school surrounding it.
I thought he said they were all abjuration.
The wards are, but I'm wondering if perhaps there were runes for each school around it. I'm wondering if perhaps we do something with these towers. Perhaps there's a way to weaken or disarm the those wards.
Yeah, like the magic that was protecting the door was abjuration. The ruins were all abjuration because they were part of the same magic. I might have like left out that idea that the ruins are glowing with the same abjuration magic. But that can be a little bit more to understand. That you're probably on the right idea that you need all 12 or all 8 schools.
Right, so like the runes were glowing with abjuration magic, but the runes themselves, they were of the
Yeah, you would have
right.
like evocation, the ruin, glowing with abjuration magic. Abjuration, the rune, glowing with abjuration magic.
Yeah. So I think the Lixis might be onto something. Perhaps it's like you almost need to like prove your knowledge of a particular school before you're able to potentially get entrance, or perhaps there's a way to um yeah, but I think it would, in for given kind of our limited amount of knowledge now, that seems like a potential approach to go with. So given kind of um, we've been traveling for a while, so Brennan kind of has an idea of kind of what sort of magic Blix's favors, and same similar with Brannick. Perhaps we continue our search. It might be easiest to, perhaps we can find a spire that corresponds with either evocation or divination, or I suppose necromancy with Delines. What do you all think of that idea?
Let me get a D20 and a D12 from each of you.
The logic sounds good to me, Brennick.
So if you guys split up to look at the three towers immediately south of, even if you don't actually split up, if you guys basically cover like looking at these towers, you're going to basically quickly see that the tower to the south of the museum, that seems to be some sort of high tower. Doesn't seem to have any signs of any of the schools of magic written on the outside of it. You will find a similar circumstance to the thing that is to the east of that, which is like the thing with like the three little like openings towards the top. You'll see if you go inside of there, that seems to be some sort of concert hall. And then you can again confirm that initial one is, I think I said transmutation. And then the next one that you're going to come across kind of behind it, and like almost directly east of the actual tower there. It kind of has mist around it. That one you get a little bit closer to see has the sign for the School of Illusion. Um, Roll another d20 for me, Fen. Brennick, you are going to find. Roll a die for me, Brennick, odd or even, basically. You are going to find one of those small cubes. You take a moment to kind of look over it, and you can kind of basically touch one of these runes, and it immediately starts creating heat. You can touch it again to turn it off, but effectively you've got one of those little like heat devices. Looks exactly like the one that the drow had on that desk.
That's certainly come in useful. The heat that it generates, like if when I turn it on when I'm holding it, is it like hot enough that it like hurts, or is it almost more of a comfortable warmth?
Holding it in your hands, it would certainly hurt. It's never so much like hurt that you're actually severely burning yourself. Probably the only kind of danger would really be like sleeping directly on it, directly in skin contact. Um, it's a very like comfortable, cozy kind of hurt though, in a place like this. Like you could definitely masochistically like enjoy how hot that is, but it effectively is not going to burn you.
Gotcha. Okay. Um, yeah, but he'll kind of he'll note his find to the others, kind of show them how it works. And then for now, he will turn it back off and he will kind of stow it away.
And then, Fen, you're going to end up finding a kind of piece of um, like the marquee board outside of like this music hall, and you can kind of see like it seems that these ruins kind of talk about like the ancient Astorians, and it seems to be almost like a heroic tale of this like mythical wizard who basically went on this quest to find, and he's kind of like an archaeological like hero. He's not like the like everyman's favorite. He's a little bit of a scoundrel. But you kind of see like there's this play that's specifically dedicated to this figure who kind of went after the Astorians. I don't think it would be crazy, but let me get a history check from here. Specifically Fen here. Yeah, I think we'll leave it at that. And yeah, so that kind of covers these immediate next few buildings where you can kind of see, like, you can investigate further to figure out what that tower is. You could look further to figure out like what the concert hall is.
So I think Brannick is thinking now that we kind of have an idea of what we're looking for, like he's almost like once we determine that it's not, doesn't seem to be one of these, one of the school towers, um, he's kind of not quite as interested in looking through it, at least not now. He's more like he wants to try and find, the specifically the school towers.
Yeah, so I think with seeing three, I think you guys would vaguely understand at least that you were close to one previously when you were near those tubes. That there's one on the opposite side of the main spires. Um, you have reason to wonder about like that one off to the east, and I think it would be kind of similar. I feel like there's another one that like looks kind of similar to that. But you guys can kind of see like it seems like the schools are these ones that are immediately around it, and you can see five of them, which means you're missing three schools. So then if you start to expand out, you saw like at least the tubes out here were another concert hall. There doesn't seem to be a school that you can see on this side, but like that one to the southeast, or what is that, northeast of you, might be a school, and then the other ones behind it you can't really see right now. But you guys have a pretty solid idea, at least. Like, there's these districts that seem to be largely maybe housing and some other stuff, and then there's specifically like the schools towards the center. As you progress forward, do you think you would continue counterclockwise? Do you think you have cause to go back and see the school that you are already close to?
Brannick is thinking just kind of let's complete the circuit almost. So continuing counter.
My bad, I actually forgot. I forgot Ben rolled a nat one here. So when you guys are investigating, I think I sent Fen kind of towards the concert hall, as like leading the concert hall just die wise. When you guys are kind of coming out of noticing that this is not one of those towers, you're going to see three largely spectral hands, and they are physical enough that you can see them catching light as they're kind of flying past you towards the transmutation school, past the transmutation school, and they're going to pass like right into the actual tower underneath, and they're going to go towards that light before they basically are going to be lost in the light as they kind of go on. But you're going to kind of see these things, and when they're close to you, it's very clear that they are easily your size, twice your size, if not larger. But you're going to see these kind of like fly past you and just continue moving towards the center of the structure. And then my apologies there, Brennick. You can kind of continue from there.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I was just thinking essentially, Brennick will just kind of continue the way we were going counterclockwise. Um, but, although he would maybe be interested in, just for to be thorough, maybe checking out those other kind of towers that seem a little bit farther away, but maybe they're schools. So like this one off to the east.
Sound like a plan to the other two?
Yep. But let's definitely agree to go check out the other towers, especially one that's furthest.
It's all Greek defense, so sure.
Do you want to do something like you're checking out these towers? Are you thinking something like this? What are you actually thinking? And like that one back there?
So I think as we like leave the transmutation, um, probably Brennick would be more look starting to the just going to like essentially east to the one that like on the map that has a question mark, but not the one that's to the south of that one. Unless the others want to check that one as well. But his like first attention we brought to that kind of the one to the east of the illusion and transmutation, and then maybe up head north towards the other one, the north one from there.
Bullets would agree to this.
Let me go for the same thing again. Let me have you each roll a d20, a d12. Yeah. All right. So, as you all start to travel around and search out these next few locations here, you're going to find, let's see, Fen, let me get another d20 from you. Brannick, did you roll a d12 as well? Okay, never mind. I just saw it. Yeah, so I think Fen's gonna come across like a stone placard that's just on one of these buildings that you can kind of see some of the symbols on, and you'll eventually like gather the others to you to like point out this little plaque that actually like represents some of these symbols. And as they start to translate it and you guys make sense, you can basically see that this is some sort of like administrative house. It talks about the students of the School of the Arcane coming to register for their final placement in one of these schools, and it lists like the 8 schools of magic. But it kind of is like a little sign, like the School of the Arcane is almost like pre-graduate school, and then you go into your actual program of specialty when you join one of the schools. Um, Other than that, I think, yeah, you guys are going to eventually see that the spire in the, it's like the northeast, is the Spire of Enchantment. That it's just kind of like beyond the Spire of Illusion. The one that is behind this main spire will be the Spire of Evocation. When you get closer to that, you can see that that tower has actually kind of like a sharp outer edge to it. So like where the talon claw of like these other ones is like the only kind of like pointy sharp part that like focuses out, like the outside of the School of Evocation has like a mohawk almost, and you can see that it's shaped a lot like an axe blade, where it has like a little bit of weight like towards the actual tower, and then outside of the tower it has like that very big sharp like expansive fan. And you can kind of see like inside and around this tower is charred. You can see clear signs of like carbon charring the bases of this place, as fire is 100% at home in this place. You guys investigate a little bit closer, you can see towards the base of it, there's a spiral staircase that extends like up and into the tower. But otherwise, like the base of this place seems to be almost like open, just kind of free flowing with whatever these were, like sidewalks, sometime in the past.
Felixus seems your specialty. Do you think we should try your idea?
Felicia's puts her arms down. She puts her palms together and begins to weave a molten ball in her hand and releases it as she casts her fireball.
Gotcha. So you're just kind of like slinging this into the center of the tower.
Pretty much. But I'm sorry, but she's going to contain a bit as to not try to destroy anything.
How are you going to do that when you're casting a fireball? It's a very contradictory thing to tell me, that you're doing something that creates destruction, but you don't want to destroy anything.
Basically, she's going to. Oh shit!
I mean, you said the tower shows signs of like carbon, and presumably if this is a school of evocation, then we're probably flinging stuff left and right. So Brennick would imagine that it's probably a fairly sturdy building. I don't imagine a single fireball, even from you, Velixus, is enough to destroy this.
Are you going to cast it?
I am, and I'm gonna what I'm gonna do is basically try to make mold my fireball once it gets out to basically try to match some of the carvings.
I think you can protect friendly creatures, but I think it's a lot to say that you can mold around a building. Do you want to risk the building, or do you not want to risk the building?
I'm risking the building.
And you shoot off a fireball. Nothing seems to happen. You guys are still pretty close to the tower.
So Brennick is going to start walking towards. Do we see an entryway?
Kind of the base of the tower is like open with those like legs. As far as things go, like that's where you can't enter. You would still see similar runes around some of those legs. Um, but if you want to get the exact same situation, you might find yourselves heading like all the way back to um the actual tube that like headed up there. I don't think any of the other things are warded in the same way. Are you like just gonna walk back to the spire and try to walk through the force field?
Um, so Brennick's saying he wants to try and get inside this spire. Um,
Inside the Spire of Evocation?
yes, sorry, yeah.
You've got those stairs directly in the center kind of this spire. Like its outside is kind of the same thing where it has like some parts of the spire are coming out of it, but like the inside of this one is very open in the same way. And those center spiral stairs lead right up into the Tower of Evocation.
Okay, so Brennick's going to look towards the others, kind of maybe suggest they just stand back for a moment. Um, but he will, start to try and make his way up the stairs.
So when you head up the stairs, the first opening you're going to kind of come to, well, really, while you're heading up the stairs, you'll already start to see that the room that you're going towards is shining light out. You're seeing colors of like red and yellows. Um, yeah, I think you'll kind of see those blinks where eventually you can walk into what is kind of this 30 or so foot wide room, roughly octagonal, and there are red orbs and kind of yellow fireflies that are just dancing all around inside of this room. So it's like a epileptic nightmare to walk into there. But you can kind of see all of these different things. Another room that you can see physical signs of damage from all kinds of spell work being kind of practiced inside of this area. You see like a large central brazier burning with a little bit of fire, 10 little alcoves that kind of surround the actual room, and each of those is frozen in ice. My bad, I said 10, it should have been 8.
Eight alcoves. Okay.
They're
And
8
Brennick.
10-foot square alcoves. So I think I said 10 alcoves, but they're 8 alcoves.
Okay. And once Brennick kind of was able to start up the stairs without blowing up, he would kind of wait for the others to join him. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, Evolution started following you up the stairs shortly afterwards.
So looking at this like central brazier, do we see? Does Brennick see any sign of any sort of fuel, or does it seem to be a magical fire?
My bad. That is my fault. That is not supposed to be lit right now.
Okay, so it's just an unlit.
Yeah. So you're standing in this room with the orbs of light kind of glowing and dancing around you. The central brazier is just kind of like sitting there, and you have these 8 alcoves filled with ice all around you.
So Brennick. Sorry, go ahead.
If you were walking up to investigate its fuel source on the brazier, would you light a brazier that was unlit? Like, would you take flame to it?
Probably not immediately. I was thinking Brannick was going to. He would go over towards one of kind of the iced over alcoves and just try and see how. Any sense of how thick the ice is?
Roll a perception check.
Like, is it like opaque?
Looking through the ice, you're pretty sure you can see like walls about 10 or so feet beyond it. Might be 15, might be a little bit less than 10. But again, like vaguely, these are like 10-foot square alcoves.
Gotcha. So he's seeing kind of going back and looking at the unlit brazier, thinking maybe the since it went out, maybe that's what allowed the kind of the alcoves to be iced over. He'll kind of look towards Fen and Felixis. We try and light it. Do you think?
We can definitely try. See what happens.
How do you guys want to light it? Who wants to put fire to it? What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, so Brannick is going to he'll again kind of suggest they kind of take a little bit of a step back, kind of towards the the edges of the room, and he's going to just try and start with a just shoot a firebolt towards the brazier.
Gotcha, roll a spell attack. Swish right in the basket. It's going to catch fire and start to burn.
And then, sorry, did you say so? Is this one large brazier, or are there kind of multiple little braziers?
One large, like a 30-foot room. It's probably say like a 5-foot diameter. It's probably about 10 or so feet from all of the walls, kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
What is that? Like a 12-foot donut, probably between the brazier and the walls. So you guys light this. It burns. Nothing seems to happen at first. Any thoughts? What are you guys doing? Do you intend to wait and see if it melts the ice?
Is this kind of have we reached the what seems to be the top, or is there more places to explore? Like, does the tower continue up?
But let's just look around the room and see if there's any like notes or anything that anyone may have possibly left that could give us a clue as to how to get inside or whatnot.
Damn it, I was on my file program. Let me get a perception from Brennick as you're kind of like looking around and looking up for a way further into the spire. And let me get a perception from Valixis, but you are inside of a room that has the spiral staircase that leads into it, this central brazier that's now on fire, and then there's basically just these 8 alcoves of ice. Otherwise, this room is pretty much just emptiness. Brennick, when you look up, you are going to see that there are runes inscribed on the ceiling above you. And those runes say... you guys can eventually translate these as: fifth, quench the flame in thy palm with ice.
Seems seems as if it's a step. Perhaps this has something to do with how to get past those wards.
Sounds like it's still like if you put a it says crystal flame in a palm with ice. I mean, it sounds like it basically just told us to just turn fire into ice that's in our hand. How would you do that? Do you know of any way to do something like that?
Well, perhaps it will make more sense if we can discover the rest of whatever this is a part of. Obviously, seems like a fifth step. There must be a first through a fourth. Perhaps if we investigate the other towers,
And we'll nod in agreement.
given this is the School of Evocation, perhaps the note is suggesting the one must be adept at different different kinds. But yes, I think perhaps if we keep investigating, perhaps if we can learn more about whatever this is, more lines, it might become clearer.
Were the schools were made at different times, weren't they? Each magic was discovered at a different time. Maybe that's if each one was discovered at a different time, then in that order, we could visit each school in that order and see if that would help out, as opposed to just going from tower to tower.
Have we seen anything, or do we know anything to suggest that like the schools were established in any particular order?
I don't believe so.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just, as long as if we can find all 8 or however many there are, actually we can put it together. We'll need all the steps in any event, so imagine.
All right. Well, let's go. Let's get to the next one, to the one that's closest to us, and maybe once we can get inside, once we're inside, we can see if there's any more rooms or anything, or if there's a little step in there.
So I believe the School of Illusion would be the closest one, the one that we passed. Perhaps we head back and try that one.
So I think where you guys are standing at the School of Evocation, School of Illusion would indeed be the closest. But you also have a black obelisk that is behind you that almost fits the bill, but it's not quite the same. But I don't know if you guys are wise enough to yet know that you can simply write that off. Um, but where you guys are looking off to the west of you, there doesn't appear to be any more spires. There's a lot of destruction along that western side.
No, I think Brannick's, would be curious about the obelisk rather than suggesting that we double back, kind of check out the obelisk first.
Sound like a plan for everyone else?
Yep.
Yep.
So when you all start to head towards this obelisk, you're going to see that it is not the same stone as the actual stone it rests on. The obelisk is still a dark black stone in very similar kind of like glass, almost ice kind of look. Its surface is covered in runes, and it seems to almost come up from the ground as if like the surface of this place was disturbed to kind of like rise this thing within it. But it has a small crack that kind of stretches on one side of it from the base, like into the middle, and kind of like up about 20 or so feet.
So given it's seems to be covered in runes, take quite a lot of time to try and translate these. Brannick will suggest that there may be we can wait about 10 minutes. I can cast something that should allow me to read it. Perhaps there's some clues on this obelisk.
I have this spell for comprehend languages prepared. Everyone have to wait. I can go ahead and cast it on us.
If we don't have to wait, yeah, Brannick will uh, um, agree that that might be better.
So Melissa does cast comprehend languages on Brennick.
I think you can only target yourself with that.
Yep, I can only protect myself with that one. All right, I'm going to just cast it on myself.
What are you going for? Comprehend languages?
Yeah.
And then
Gotcha. So, looking over this, you're probably going to see um, all of these schools of magic are represented here. You're going to see signs of schools that you may be less familiar with, as well as more familiar with, as you see schools described as those very things, like graviturgy as well as chronomancy. But you will see that the 8 schools are repeated over and over again. You can see signs that this thing is some sort of protective magic that's kind of engraved into the stone itself. And you can see signs of what appears to be a name kind of coming up over and over again. And you will see that this magic seems to be the magic of a wizard who names himself Irothalas. You'll see that name over and over again, as if this obelisk were some sort of protection that Erothalas wove to protect the entire city. And seeing the crack in it, you might have some feeling that perhaps whatever happened cracked this obelisk and did not allow it to protect the city, or something else catastrophic must have happened, because you're looking at like a font of magical power that seems to be its entire reason to exist is to make sure this city is never in this exact position you are currently in.
Phyllis is basically Lieutenant Brennan has been explained everything that she was able to read on the obelisk and get from it.
So does this seem like it could be one of the there's one of the books that Brannick had picked up, I think, in the other Spire, talked about the creation of mythalars. And like in does this seem like it could be something like that he'd read about?
Roll a Arcana check with advantage. Assuming you're kind of like referencing the book, so you're like looking at exactly what you're like hoping for, like you're going to the exact like right page kind of thing, reading the right text. You're going to start to read out this description of the Mythalar and start to recognize as it describes it, this is a device capable of creating great amounts of light. It is the central spire of the levitating cities of the Nethril. They are used to control the weather as well as control the actual flight. That if a Mythalar fails, the city is likely to crash. And you're basically kind of recognizing that that sun-like object underneath the spire is indeed a Netheril Mythalar. The spire is not.
Okay. Yeah, but Brannick will kind of as he's reading and referencing and looking and kind of putting it all the pieces together in his head, he'll kind of be pretty excited because those are I think those are I mean, I don't know what kind of background knowledge he'd had about those things, but I think he would at least know they're fairly like they're like kind of mythical, rare things. Um, so he would, yeah, he would kind of be explaining it to, or trying to explain it. He might be using kind of, I don't know how much Ben would get because he'd probably be trying to, he was explaining it very like kind of, um, almost like dry academic way. Um, but yeah,
Let me get a Arcana from the Wizards and a History from Fen here. There are certain powerful entities and powerful wizards through time that have gained access to certain objects that allow them to protect things they value most. It's probably a pretty rare reference to have come across, but there's certain arc liches that have dominated these things. There's certain rumors from the jungles to the south that have spoken about these things. But I think in a very obscure way, all three of you can certainly have like a different, almost like mythic kind of story, something that maybe a parent shared with you, or maybe like a sibling or a friend at school told you, trying to scare you or frighten you. But there's a lot of different things, and this is one of those almost like symmetries of kind of myth. Like they're through all the different cultures. But the description of these black obelisks, these like runic conduits through time, they are the source of like a lot of like time travel tales. Um, and I think with those roles, all three of you can kind of recognize that um, when Valixis speaks of the actual chronomancy rune in this thing, like that in part is part of why this thing will almost like click for that. Brannick, it's definitely strongest with you, but I think even Valixis could have like an old tale that kind of references it. Fen probably has like a nighttime or like a bedtime story. It could be like an ancient story of like a monk who like had to pass into this mountain and he never returned, but he's also like looks remarkably similar to like the monk who founded that school. Kind of weird things that like get wibbly wobbly into time. All of them would be very kind of back of your mind, and might be likely the type of thing that like each of you keeps this very close to yourself. You don't even want to like talk about it. It's so kind of weird. This is a world of magic, and talking about manipulating time is still a very weird kind of thing to consider. Divination, you're looking forward into time, and you're looking forward towards things, but you're never being able to go back on them. But I would say that's something that all of you can kind of end this session with. That obelisk is one of those kind of like mythic level stories you've heard through your life, where people kind of whisper in the deepest times of the night. But I think that's where we will end things for this week here.